This is the Engage Your Destiny podcast, where your destiny is our mission. Serving our active military, veterans, and families. Welcome to the show.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Engage Your Destiny podcast as we are telling the stories of veterans and their faith stories and how Jesus has impacted their journey and their walk through combat and through serving after the military. It's my honor to be with you, and I just want you guys to know that each week we're coming out with new stories that are going to impact, that are going to change lives, and as we're telling these stories, I want to hear from you. And could you respond on the podcast, respond on the Engage Your Destiny website? What stories do you want to hear? Or if you have a story that you want to tell, please reach out to us, and we would love to have you on the show. And so with us this week is Matt Murphy, who, man, this is quite the resume, Matt. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks, I appreciate
it. So you served 18 and a half years. You medically retired from the Special Forces, 5th Special Forces Group. You were a part of CIA ground branch and an operator with them. You founded Operation Lightshine while you were still in.
Still in.
Which is combating child trafficking.
Yes.
You were the president of the Sentinel Foundation, which also was battling human trafficking. Mm-hmm. You have 3 girls, 16, 12, and 2, and you follow Jesus.
I do.
Wow, man.
Took me a long time to get there, but yeah.
It takes us all a little while to figure it out, huh?
That is the truth, man. I mean, I was raised in the church, and I think a lot of people probably end up in church on and off throughout childhood, just depending on the upbringing. But I was raised in a Southern Baptist church in Memphis, Tennessee.
In Tennessee.
Yeah.
Okay.
And man, that was it was an experience, because you start, as you get older and you start to make friends and just, meet people from different denominations and different walks of faith and everything else. I started to really question the religious dynamic young. Yeah. I think because I think there's a big difference between faith and then religion, right? Yeah. And the organized practice of it. So just the way my brain works, I'm a problem solver, and if something doesn't make sense, then I'm gonna figure it out. And then that was really where I started to turn away from God and faith, was the religious institution, not necessarily the Bible and Jesus, right? And
they started to separate.
Yeah, 100%, because the things just start to not make sense, or you start to see how people can manipulate or use the gospel to control others. And I started to see that very young and just got a bad taste in my mouth with
religion. In the church you were in?
In the church I was in. And so, I started to walk away from it and not be a believer. I would still pray every once in a while. I didn't not believe, I think, or know that he was real. Just kind of, it was like, why does this happen? Why is this allowed to happen?
What age did you kind of start stepping away?
I would say middle school, definitely high school.
Yeah. 15, 16.
Yeah, right around there.
And how old were you when you joined the military?
So I joined at 23. I went to University of Memphis first. Did not, again, find something in college where I'm like, I'm going to be that. Yeah. I've switched majors a few times. There just wasn't something that inspired me so much that I wanted to make that my degree and then profession the rest of my life. Yeah. And that's when I started to look at the military. I was in an argument in political science class.
Okay.
About the country and politics. It was just a very debated. A very heated debate,
dude. That was a debatable time as everything in the early 2000s was kicking off.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Iraq, Afghanistan were now in full swing. Because I was in high school watching, I think senior year, watching the planes hit the Twin Towers, and then obviously that impacted so many veterans since, because we all joined from that event, mostly in that time. So I was in this argument, and this girl looked at me and she's like, how can you say what you say and believe what you say when you've never fought for it or served it?
Wow.
It was a powerful statement. Now, that wasn't the only thing that led me to the military, but that was a big piece of what helped started steering, the ship towards joining. And I remember when I did finally want to go to the military, I walked into the recruiter's office. I did zero research.
Yeah.
Zero research. And I just went to the guy. I literally said, I want to go fight in Iraq.
Yeah.
And he's like, you want to go fight in Iraq? And he's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, infantry, I guess, fight.
Yeah. What job can I go fight people?
Yeah. Where do I get to fight? And so he's like, all right, man. So they set me up they had this quick ship thing going on at the time where you got like an extra bonus for joining quickly because they were just trying to, get butts and seats at that time. And and so 2 weeks later, I was off.
Jeez. Fort Benning.
Yep, Fort Benning.
Basic training.
Yep, and that was definitely an experience. I mean, basic wasn't really all that hard though. I mean, it sucked not because it was hard, just your life gets flipped upside down.
Totally.
You're cut off from everything. Your communication. I don't know how it is nowadays with cell phones, and the Army's changed a lot since I joined.
Same here.
And I got told, like, even when I joined, it used to be so much harder. I think everyone says that.
Everyone go back to my time. That was the hardest.
But I do agree that it was probably a lot harder in the 70s and 80s. Definitely a lot harder during Vietnam. I think as our culture has weakened, as masculinity has weakened, as just this is an opinion a lot of people don't like, but as our country has weakened, that has directly affected the standard quality of men that join the military, and then also to the training.
Yeah,
and that's one of the biggest gripes because
most people can handle.
Yeah, 100%. Well, it's like look at our society now, and most of what. Now, this isn't all, but this is sadly a majority. There's so much weakness in our society. I think a lot of it has to do with a lack of faith, a lack of people following Jesus. But that directly translates into the types of people that, and the issues that they deal with joining the military, or the types of recruits that they get now.
I've spent some time down at Fort Benning, with basic training soldiers, and they're dealing with all these stress fractures because it's a lot of young men that have never gone and run and jumped and pushed their body super hard, and then you go into basic training and your knees and your shins they can't handle the pounding.
100%. And their thumbs are pretty strong.
Yeah, those thumbs are real strong.
Playing video games. Yeah. And and I'm not bashing on people for that, but because it's our fault, I believe. It's adults' faults, it's parents' faults. We've allowed these things to happen. We're not making our kids go play outside. We're not making our children, if they get in a fight, it's the end of the world. Boys need a fight.
Yeah,
I'm a big proponent of that. I'm not saying kill each other, but you got to learn how to take a punch, give a punch. There is a time when somebody deserves to get hit. There,
the Lord gave you 3 girls.
Yeah, he did. So I'm just saying, like, we've got a culture of very weak people. Now that's not across the board, but it is sadly a majority.
Huh. So you go through basic and AIT at Benning.
I do.
And then what was next? What was your first duty station?
So I got bomb holder Germany. That was my first duty station.
Wow.
So I started off in mechanized infantry. Yeah. So I was like, I didn't even really know what that meant.
Right.
Because you don't talk about that stuff in infantry basic training. That's where all the fat kids go, apparently.
Absolutely.
The guys that ride around in the Bradleys and there are a couple other vehicles, but
they're good at running tanks, not so much at running sprints.
100%. So the training is, in my opinion, very similar, other than the fact that you have a mounted squad in your platoon, and they just work on the Bradleys all day. But at that time, because of what the war was, everyone's training the same way, doing the same thing, because that was it was unconventional warfare going into Iraq. It was not, and Afghanistan, it was not, conventional, 7-8. I think they changed it to something new now. It's not 7-8, the infantry manual anymore, but, it wasn't conventional warfare. So we're all just, doing glass houses and training on how to, clear rooms and urban combat and operating in that urban environment, because we were in a train up to get to Iraq. Basically, when I showed up to Germany, the guys had just returned, that's how we're doing it. The guys had just returned from Iraq. They had done 12 months there, and I was replacing all the guys that were PCSing and leaving. It was just a flood of privates in to replace the guys that were leaving, because they were either getting out because they were forced to stay in to get out until they finished their combat tour, or they were getting to the next place to get ready for the next deployment.
Yeah. So you're in Germany.
Yep.
And then what?
So I'm in Germany. We do the train up, and then I get deployed to Sadr City. So we were there for the surge on Sadr City. That was my first, combat experience, of course.
What was the first time you were shot at?
So the first time I was shot at was like the second day I was there.
Wow.
we were doing security for Petraeus and someone else to come into Solder City and do a meeting, you know. So I'm sitting up there on the roof with an M4, you know, hanging out by a some type of part of an air conditioning thing on the roof, you know. And using that as my cover. I don't know.
Concealing cover.
Yeah, you know, probably just you know, silhouetting myself on the rooftop. But I was up there, and then a couple other guys were on other parts of the roof, and our team leader was just kind of hanging out in the middle. You know, it was a very, what we thought, a low threat day. And then I just start hearing, you know, and I've never shot before. And so I'm like, so I remember I was like looking around, you know, and at one point I kind of like stood up trying to see what that noise was. And, you know, my team leader had deployed before.
Yeah.
So it's like, they're shooting us, you an idiot.
Get down.
You know, and, you know, oh, you know, and then, they were shooting us. Wow. So that was the first time we got shot at. And then that just, you know, but, you know, when you train and prepare and, you know, all that for combat, you don't really know what it's like still, you know. I think they have that, they called it Nick at Night when I was in, where they shoot machine guns over you and you crawl through the mud and all that nonsense. I remember Nick at Night, Okay, yeah. So that's so unrealistic, right? That's like, completely. You know, trench warfare.
That's Vietnam.
Yeah, exactly. You know, definitely not like urban combat. So there was this, you know, kind of detached from the threat, understanding it's real, but until the first time you see someone get shot, you see something blown up, like something happens to you, that's really when that mindset flips. And you're like, oh, this is real.
And you were, that first deployment, you were in Iraq for 12 months?
13.
Did
13 months, man.
And what was your mission while you were there?
Just Solder City, man, just to patrol it. Yeah. I think they used us as human ID finders because we cost less than the trucks do. Wow. You know, man, so we would literally walk around on patrols, find IDs. You know, we would get in direct engagement with the Jaish al-Mahdi guys quite a bit. The team, we were building a wall to split Solder City in half because it was just so bad. It was basically like, you guys stay on this side of the wall. Yeah. We're going to be on this side of the wall. So it would be gunfights over the wall. A lot. But yeah, man, it was an interesting time. Mainly just trying not to get blown up.
Totally.
That was really the biggest threat. You know, the first guy we lost 2 weeks in, it was just tragic. He was 18 and he was gunning and but they had these EMPs EFPs, excuse me, where they would turn into like molten copper on the explosion that would pierce through anything. Yes. Well, they started making them in things like the size of like a coffee can. Yeah. And they would put them at the same height as our turrets. So, first time I saw, you know, death was picking the piece of his brains off the side of the road, you know, because they had that thing perfect. It sliced right through the glass in the gunner's turret and just decapitated him. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. So that was the day where war became real for me. It became real. Yeah, because it's really not until you're picking up your buddy's body parts off the street, you know, and like just really seeing, oh, this is how it goes. You know, you're kind of detached until then.
So what in you wanted to spend 18 more years doing that? Man. And to go to such a level as the Special Forces.
So I love to fight. Yeah. I love confrontation and chaos. I seek it. I create it if I don't have it sometimes. But it's something I'm good at. Fighting and, you know, closing with destroying. Anything inside the realm of warfare, I just loved, whether it was intel work, because I did become a human intel agent too. I did a lot of different things in warfare, but I just loved the conflict and the chaos, and I feel at peace in it. I don't know how to explain that. Maybe I need some psychiatric help, but I just really loved the conflict, and it was something that for the first time in my life, I felt purpose. Wow. I felt like it was something I was really good at and something I just belonged doing. Wow. And I remember one night, this happened quite a bit after this, but one night these guys came in, they were in little Toyota Hiluxes, you know, it's like the foreign version of the Tacoma that so many military guys drive. Made much better with diesel engines there. But anyways, digress. So these guys drive in Hiluxes, wearing whatever the heck they want, huge beards, cool guns.
Here we go.
Giving zero F's about anything, right?
The answer to no one.
Yeah, literally. And I was like, who "Who are those guys?" And they're like, those are Green Berets. And then somebody's like, "Don't look at them." Like,
Don't like eye contact.
Yeah. And they're like, "Oh," and I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah. I want to do that.
I want to do that.
I want to be one of them.
Because they would come in, they would, tell our commander whatever they were going to go do, just so he knew they were out in the battle space.
Just so you know.
Yeah. And then next thing you know, because we lived in a little JSS in Solder City called JSS Comanche, tiny little building. And it was like basically a company-sized element there. And, we were pretty vulnerable, but, we weren't on a big fob or cob or anything, just in the middle of the city, with a wall and sandbags around us. And these guys, the SF guys would go out and they'd call in like these AC-130 gun strikes. And that was just a beautiful thing to see, just the...
Laying it down.
Because they're going after evil at the end and just laying it down, the city skyline, just on fire, and you can hear the conflict. And they would get in fights like in levels we never did, right? And I was like, I got to do that.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And at this point in your life, you and God are on different playing fields.
We're not hanging out. No,
we're not hanging out.
We're not spending time together. Yeah. There were a couple of times I wanted to pray, but I didn't really know what to pray for, I think.
Sure.
Okay, I could spend, like when you grow up, I grew up in the suburbs, dad was a doctor, private schools, not a care or need in the world, first car was a 1990 jacked up Bronco, then it was a BMW. Like I had it good, man.
Yeah.
I had it good. And then I joined the military, which my mom told me. And my mom, loved her to death, super proud of me after I graduated and became all the things I became. But when I was joining, she's like, "You're an idiot."
Wow.
Because she's like, "You have all this privilege. You have all this opportunity.
You don't need this.
You don't need that. Yeah. Why are you going to go get yourself killed?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then they took my BMW away for a couple of weeks, but they gave it back to me after I finished basic.
It's tough life, man.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't have a tough life. I'm going to be 100% honest. So this was me becoming a man. I played sports. I fought I've been arrested more times than I can remember for getting in fights. I love to fight.
Yeah.
I can't stress that enough. My knuckles and fingers are just nothing but scars and broken bones, man.
Yeah.
But there was a thing about that is just like, I got to go do this. I have to go do this.
So how'd you get the opportunity?
Become a man. So you fill out a whole lot of paperwork and take a couple tests, and then you've got to meet certain standards. I think I've been blown up a lot since. I think it was like your GT score had to be 110.
Yeah.
There was you had to pass a physical fitness test to a certain level. Obviously, there were psych tests and all kinds of other things they did, and then you get to go to this thing called selection.
Yeah.
And at that time when I was going, they had just made the movie or the show 21 Days in Hell about selection, right? So you got to watch it and you're like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
But that doesn't even do it justice. It sucks. It sucks, man. Yeah.
Paint me a picture of what a day looks like.
So you get there and you just become a number. They put, I think I was 173 or 137. I got to look I had a table made that has it on it, but I forget. I was that number, right? And so you just become a number and you're a nobody. And the first couple of days, they don't let you sleep a lot. They give you just enough food based on whatever the weather is, so that you don't go into hypothermia or whatever. And I think it was the fall when I went, so it was pretty cold at night. Yeah, and I think that's the best time to go. I could not imagine going to this
in the
summer.
heat.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah,
it's a horrible idea. So you're there, and there's about 400 guys that start, and then guys just start disappearing.
Yeah.
For they don't pass this thing or they don't pass this thing, and then you're going through the psychological evaluations that put you through obstacle courses to see if you're scared or if you're going to quit or not do something, and guys just.
They just quit.
They just quit, or I'm out. And like things like that, and then do the physical fitness test and the time to rucks and all those kinds of things. So it's just constant tests, little sleep, constantly keeping you here or there. They keep you in a very. You're never stable. Like, oh, this is all right.
It's a very controlled environment.
Very, very controlled chaos. It's controlled chaos.
Yeah.
That's what they try to keep you in. And then you go into land navigation, like the STAR course. That's kind of infamous. That was interesting, to say the least.
So what's the STAR course?
So the STAR course makes a star of points that you have to find in North Carolina through the swamps and the brush and the draws and everything else. You can't use, obviously you don't have GPS. You have a compass and a map. They probably go on GPS and a cell phone now.
Yeah, right.
But
With
anyways,
Instagram.
back when it used to be hard.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so a compass and a map. You had to plot all your points and find them. And if you didn't find them in a certain time, you failed. You had to find all the points a certain time, or again, if you fail, you go home.
Yeah.
And so you do the STAR course. I think you're out there 2 or 3 days, if I remember. And then they go into this thing called Team Week, and that's just hell.
Yeah.
That's just hell. And you do a whole lot of, you have a ruck on your back the entire time you're in selection, unless you're doing the run, and the PT test. I think that's even different now. I don't know.
Yep.
But we used to have to do a 2-mile run. I think they've changed it. But they made us do all kinds of other runs too. The 2-mile was just the Army standard test that you had to pass.
Then you got to go do the real.
Then you got to do all the other runs and things, and they just make you move, make you walk. I mean, I forget how many miles you end up walking during selection with a ruck on your back.
Wow.
But then Team Week, you get all these obstacles that make you want to, die. When you're doing them. Like things you can carry. I mean, you're literally guys by this point. Most guys have fractures in their feet.
Yeah.
Shin splints.
They're working through pain.
I mean, your skin on your hand has been ripped off, from just carrying and holding so many things. And it's not fun, man. It is not fun. I don't think anyone leaves selection not broken, right? Wow. And if you make it to the end, some guys get their number called for this building. Some guys get their number called, for that building. You don't know which one, it is. And
which one's which?
Yeah. You don't know.
Yeah.
And then it's like, the guy walks in and he's like, congratulations, you've been selected. And you're like, yes.
You've been selected to go to the Q course.
Yeah.
And now the training actually starts.
Yeah. So they just were seeing if you were the kind of person, because the thing is, everyone that shows up to selection is in the best shape of their life.
Totally.
You've got college athletes, you've got just
West Point.
you got monsters, that are coming there, and everyone is a man, right? At the top of their game. And they're breaking you down physically. Everyone will break physically, and they're trying to see if your mind will keep carrying you, right? So that's what they're looking for. They're just seeing how you play well if you play well with others, how you behave, what's your attitude like, what do you like when you're tired, when you're hungry, and you're physically broken down? Who are you?
Yeah.
That's really what they're looking at. It's all mind, man. Physical just gets you there, but your mind is really it's the weakest thing in your body, and it has to become the strongest thing in your body if you're going to be in special operations, right?
Yeah.
Then you start the Q course, multiple different levels. They change the course all the time on the order of things and all that. But I started off with language, which just basically meant at that time, I'm not praising this, but all we did was drink every night and then spend 8 hours a day in language school. That was kind of the way guys survived language school. And I learned Arabic.
Yeah.
That was the last thing I wanted to do, which was tough. Now I speak it pretty fluently in a couple dialects, but then, I was a Southern boy with a drawl. I slur words and I don't pronounce some things right. So then a harsh throatal language is not necessarily ideal. I think my teacher wanted to kill me.
Yeah, I bet.
The first about month and a half of that.
Gave you a C just to get you out of there?
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, it was because they don't give you grades. There's just this test at the end. You have to pass at a certain level. And you get on the phone in a booth with a native speaker and you talk for 30, 45 minutes, maybe an hour.
Yeah.
And then this person will assess your level. That's your language score.
Yeah.
And you have to pass it with a certain score to stay in.
Wow.
Right. So then you do that for 6 months. After that, you have what they called small unit tactics, which is kind of like a condensed version of Ranger School, just in the woods playing Army.
Yep.
And then SEER School, which is not fun. I would never want to do that again. I don't think I've ever met anybody who's like, I would do that again.
Yeah.
SEER School sucks. That's not a good time.
So this is, as you've said before, you had a pretty easy life.
I did, yeah.
And these are the hardest things you've ever done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I played. I fought a lot. I played football, basketball, soccer.
But this is pushing
athletic, but this is pushing you past boundaries, past limits.
And still, are you praying?
No.
You're just doing it.
So the way I got through everything, and I know this isn't the right answer, but this is you got to play mental gymnastics, is what I did is I looked back at everything that I had made mistakes in, right? Everything that I had done wrong, everyone I had wronged. Because, I almost failed high school. I had one of the highest scores in the state on the ACT, but I almost failed high school. The only reason I got into college was because I got a full ride scholarship because of my ACT score.
Yeah.
But I literally almost failed high school grade-wise because I wouldn't do my homework.
Yeah.
You know, I would do great on tests. I don't think I even took a book out of my locker that didn't go to class. Never home. My junior and senior year of high school. I was kind of like, I was just bored.
Yeah.
I needed stimulation, and there was something about the military where I could use my mind and my body and be fully stimulated, fully engaged, right?
Yeah.
I need challenge, right? Like I told you earlier, if I don't have chaos and challenge, I'll create it. You know, because you can be your own worst enemy in that. If you thrive in that and you need it, which can make you really good, you know, sometimes your greatest strengths are also your biggest weaknesses, right?
For sure.
So yeah, no God then. I was really beating myself up internally about, oh, you did this. This is, I mean, you got to prove yourself. You said you're going to do it. Man up, you know, like, and then so it was an internal battle, not a external thing, right?
Got it.
I know, I mean, I think Jesus is internal too. It's your heart, right? You know, but if you don't know that, then, you know, you're just at war.
He's
with
not
yourself.
on the inside helping you.
Exactly.
Helping you fight those battles and those demons.
Exactly. You know, so, man, you know, there was, Q course isn't easy, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, you can spend a year and a half there and fail and that's something and then have to go home, you know? So after SEER school, you do your MOS, and I was an 18 Echo, did communication sergeant.
Wow.
So I learned all the nerd stuff, or the nerds on the team, you know, computers and radios and antennas and, you know, all that. Who knows what they learn now. It's probably something I've never heard about, but, you know, it was pretty cool, man. A lot of good knowledge for life. You know,
What was it like when you first got to your team at 5th?
Man, I think, man, it was tough because I show up. I joined the Army because I never wanted to be near water. I only want to be near water when, like, I'm on a float or a boat.
Same.
Yeah.
You want nothing to do with water.
Yeah, and I had a fraternity brother. I never joined the fraternity. He rushed with me. Excuse me, that's better the way to say it. He rushed the fraternity with me. Who's a Navy SEAL. Did the Navy, became a SEAL, did 4 or 5 years, got out, and then went to the college experience. He's an orthopedic surgeon now.
Wow,
pretty cool dude. But you know, his stories was like, I never want to be near water. You know, I don't want to drown. That's terrible. Well, I show up to 5th Special Forces Group, meet the Sergeant Major. He's like, you're tall, strong, in shape. Dive team. I'm like,
oh no.
Everything inside of me crumbled, man. Crumbled. I hate being in the water like that. Right? I think my only real...
So then you had to go to dive school?
Not yet. Not yet. So I call the company trying to find out where it was, you know, and they told me that my team was deployed overseas already.
Wow.
So like, great. So I go to the company, report in, and they're like, yeah, you need to call your team sergeant. So they give me the number, and then one of the other team sergeants comes in, and he's like, hey, Matt, I want you to say, what's up, dude? Or what's up, bro, to your team sergeant. I was like, I'm not doing that.
Oh, no.
You know, and it's like new guys have to wear a dress. I mean, I don't know what they do now, but they made us wear
Just
dresses.
tell the story, yeah.
You know, like you get hazed probably worse than people would think. You know? You're like, you're earning your keep, right?
Yeah.
You know, probably not like that anymore. I mean, you know, but because you know, again, cultures change. But so this guy has me do it, or is telling me to do it, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing that, because I would rather piss him off than piss my new boss off, who's overseas, and you have to show up to that, right?
Yeah.
Like, and because I found out my team sergeant at the time was the last guy you F with anywhere, you know, around, just this big burly, no nonsense guy. He'd tell anyone to go F themselves, even the boss.
Wow.
You know, like he was just that kind of guy.
Yeah.
You know, and so anyways, I talked to him. He's like, just get ready. I'm going to put you on a plane to Jordan in 2 weeks. We're taking the Jorsoff to Afghanistan.
Wow.
All right. So they were in Jordan.
So you're going to go catch up with your team?
Yeah, I'm going to go catch up with my team.
Were you replacing someone who had died?
No. Luckily, nobody had died. But what was funny, and I didn't obviously know this till I showed up in country, the guy who was my senior on the team was like a legend in Germany, because he was the only guy up until me that became a Green Beret.
Wow.
In bomb holder. And so he became a Green Beret, and no one had heard from him. He was my first team leader for like 2 weeks. So when I was a new private, he was the guy that smoked me all day, every day.
Wow.
He ended up being my senior on the team. It's kind of a like small world, man. And now we're really close friends, but you know, it's just it was a dynamic, you know. So him and I from Germany, the only two guys that became Green Berets during that time, ended up on the same team together in the same MLS. It was just funny, man.
Yeah.
So get to you know, 2 weeks to get my family at the time settled, everything, and then I'm on a plane and we go take the JORS off to Afghanistan. And yeah, man, we did 6 months in Afghanistan. SF deployments are shorter and quicker. Combat 6 months, JSETs can be 6 weeks, 3 months, you know, it just depends.
So you'd been to Iraq with the mechanized infantry. Now you're in Afghanistan with
special operations.
What was the difference?
Oh, complete difference in mission, mindset, you know, what you can and can't do. I mean, there's a lot of leeway in SF. Your battle space is your battle space, and you fight who you want to fight, you hunt who you want to hunt, unless something comes down from command to take care of it. You're doing your own intelligence, you're doing your own targets, you're just doing your own thing. Like that's
so who
your
oversees that for strategic, like if you guys are just doing your own thing?
We have SF command. Like they'll pass things down for you to do, but it's a very general mission. Kill bad guys. You know, get rid of the ID threat. You know, stop the rat lines that moving the weapons through. You know, it's very general. And then we have our own intel guys who do the human intelligence. We have our own intel guy who does all the technical stuff, the Fox on the team, and then everybody else has their skill sets, and you learn a million things. Like what I really learned real quick is that nothing that I learned in the Q course had anything to do with what I was doing.
Crazy.
You know, because it's just like you don't know.
You're also dealing with mountain warfare.
The first 3 years you're on a special forces team, just sit down and shut up. Because you got a lot to learn, right?
A lot to learn.
But what was crazy, man, just timing and everything that happened, we got notified during the deployment to Afghanistan that guys had been detailed to the CIA. And we're like, all right. So there was this new program starting up. Everybody had heard about it. Now I could literally wear whatever I want because we could do beards and stuff on deployments. But when we were home, we would, like you'd shave every few days. If you put the uniform on, you'd respect it sometimes and shave. But most of the time, you're not, no one really cares. You don't have somebody being like, look at your hair, like that kind of stuff, Well, man, I just started growing. I had a ponytail down to my shoulders, just beard. I big old Irish, started to turn red beard down the ear. Wow. Just got put on this mission. I looked like a jihadist, an Irish jihadist, I think.
Wow.
And then we just got put on this agency thing, and so cool, man. I've gotten to do.
And that was for the CIA. Mm-hmm. And what were you doing for them?
I can't talk about what we were doing, but
sure.
The typical unconventional warfare thing where you're destabilizing some country, kind of thing, and trying to start things, sabotage, subversion, training, weapons.
What did you learn while you were there? Man,
a lot. That our government's the devil sometimes, right? Yeah. It's. I'll say this, man, and I say this jokingly. I didn't say that jokingly. One of the hardest things that you learn, and when you're in special operations and in especially the agency intelligence and those types of things, is that you're going toe to toe with nefarious forces, very nefarious forces, and you don't become them, but you can't fight a wolf if you're a sheep, right?
Yeah.
You got to become a sheepdog. So the only thing that makes you different than a terrorist or any of these other people is, I think, your empathy, why you're doing what you're doing, right?
Your empathy.
Yeah, your empathy, right? Because a sociopath doesn't have empathy, right? I mean, serial killer, all kinds of crazy stuff. There's no empathy for others. There's nothing in your heart.
There's no guilt.
That's the only thing that sets, I think, special operations guys apart from just straight killers, right? Is the fact that we have empathy. We're killing for someone else. We're killing for a reason. There is a righteous thing behind what you do. It doesn't not necessarily mean religion, just you are protecting the innocent, right?
Yeah.
Freeing the oppressed, the oppressor liber, right? And so in the agency and intel world, there's just a lot of dirty things that happen. I don't want to dig into that too much, but it's a very nefarious world.
Yeah.
Man. it opens your eyes up to so much about how the world really works, what's really going on, what's really true.
Yeah.
You know,
What did that do in your heart?
that was probably the blackest my soul and my heart had ever been when I started on that path there.
Because of what you were seeing,
Seeing and
what
doing.
you were doing.
Yeah, all of it, man. Well, because, in SF, you see behind the curtain. You see a lot behind the curtain. Not just, when I joined the military, there was the Toby Keith song playing in the background, and in basic, gonna put a boot in his ass kind of thing, go get revenge, American flag, patriotism, the eagle screaming behind me kind of thing. That was how it was. What I learned really quickly in special operations is that's not why we were there, and what we did. And then what I learned in the agency is the world's a really messed up place.
Why were you there?
So skill sets, language,
Well, no, I understand why you were there.
Mm-hmm.
Why were we there?
It's been, not to do too much of a tangent on politics, but, America's always going to put its interests first, right? And we've got, mouths to feed, bills to pay, and there's certain levels of control, that are necessary. And again, there's certain levels of destabilization and chaos. The more time you spend in the military, in special operations, in the intel world, you really learn that everything comes back to resources and money.
Yeah.
Simply. There's no other excuse. Now, we all get told things, to get us motivated. And nobody's going to say, hey, you want to join the military and go fight for oil? Be like, I'm good. But if you want to go fight for your country or avenge 9/11 and all these kind of things, you're like, let's go.
Yeah.
Right? But you really realize, the whole reason we went into Iraq was a lie. That's already been, public knowledge. We had an informant lie about weapons of mass destruction that Saddam never had. The whole Afghanistan thing, you don't even want me to go down that rabbit hole. But there was not a lot of good reason that we went. There was a lot of lies that drove a nation to war behind Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's that when you start to realize these things and see these things and
For yourself,
right? And it's a very toxic dynamic to be in mentally, because then you're like, why did should I be killing all these people? Or sending all these people to death? Should I, am I the bad guy? You start to question a lot of things. And that's really where I think I started to morally spiral. Yeah, man, because if I were the devil, you can't dance for the devil too long without kissing him, kind of thing. You start to become, I think what you play with. And
what did that look like?
Well, man, it starts to poison your soul. A lot of special operations guys, given the gravity of work that we do, a lot of us turn to womanizing. A lot of us turn to drinking, partying way too hard, drugs. A lot of things were happening bad at that time. You can't keep people in constant states of chaos and war and just deploy them over and over and over again and not expect them to start to fracture and break, right? It is very hard to not fracture and break when all you're doing is killing, seeing death, constantly in high stress threat environments. When you get into the intel world, paranoia is really the only thing that keeps you safe. You don't know what the threats are.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever find yourself interrogating and talking with terrorists?
No, man. Luckily, that was never my job to interrogate people. There's trained people with that. Tactical interrogation. I won't talk about that. It's probably illegal.
Yeah.
But I'm kidding.
I get it.
But yes, there you would have the dynamic. But what you find out, man, is one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Yeah,
right? They're fighting you for the same reasons you're fighting them. Because we all believe in different things. We've all been told different things. We all have different allegiances to different things. And what you learn is you start to see that most guys, we're just young men fighting an old man's war, right? We're fighting for money, we're fighting for politics, religion, God, Allah, whatever you want to call it. And the youth are out there, getting bloody and dying. But it's the politicians and the sheikhs and all the agendas, and nothing is really what it seems, is what I'm saying in that. Because when you enter an unconventional warfare dynamic, it's not just Russia versus America or China versus America, and we're fighting for our country's existence. There's a lot of times you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, right? But you know it has to do with money, or it has to do with control, or a corporation, or whatever. So it starts to get you into this interesting place. Very interesting place mentally. That's not a good place to be at all, because you lose the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Matt who wanted to go serve his country.
The purity.
Now just a empty-hearted killer.
An empty-hearted killer. Mm-hmm. Who has to keep searching for the next thing to fill his soul. Yeah,
it's like a drug. It really is like a drug, it messes a lot of us up. I mean, I'm still in the drug. I still do this stuff, just in different ways. It becomes a part of you, a part of your identity, who you are. And man, it's so hard to fight that and be different. Yeah. I would lose my mind if I had to sit in an office for a whole day, literally lose my mind. And even though I'm an executive, I don't sit in the office all day.
For sure.
Yeah.
So coming through the time, CIA operative, and you're in the darkest part of your soul.
100%.
Of your life.
The marriage was completely destroyed. Take full accountability for that, because, I can blame the government and being deployed and never home quite a bit, but I wasn't a good person. There was not a lot of love, masculinity, and leadership as a man and love for my wife.
So the furthest you were from Jesus, the worst
everything
of the darkness of your soul.
100%.
Yeah. As a husband, as a father, as a man. So that chasm, as it got wider, it got worse.
100%.
Yeah.
I think I would be the best marriage therapist in the world after all of the things that I have done, right? Yeah. And seen the bad outcomes of, man. Because if you don't have God, there's not a lot of, and you're doing all that stuff, man, you don't have anything good pointing you in a good direction, right? There's nothing left. Yeah. So, I got, after my time with the agency, came back to 5th Group, just worked the Syria thing from every angle possible, from Free Syrian Army to the Kurdish push to finally destroy ISIS.
Wow. You were a part of all that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What was it like working with the Kurds?
Oh, man, there's some fighters.
Yeah.
The Kurds are sandwiched between everyone. No one likes the Kurds. They're always fighting somebody.
They're on their own.
They're on their own. Turkey hates them, and the Kurds in every country they're in are hated by the country that they're in. They drew the Lawrence of Arabia story, the lines in the sand that created the Middle Eastern countries. They drew the lines between all the Kurdish, regions and the Sunnis, Shias too. So, that's why the Middle East will never be peaceful without dictators. You have to have dictators. The worst thing we ever did for Iraq was take out Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, I get it.
And so yeah, man, it's those dynamics religiously, they've been there for thousands of years, old as time, at least we know, right? Because Judaism, then Christianity, then Islam, all came from that region of the world. So the hatred, the fighting over who's right, what's wrong, is never going to stop.
Yeah.
Until God comes back.
Totally. So take me through, you've had time in the agency, you've had time in 5th Special Forces Group. When was there a bit of a shift as you started progressing through your career to where you are getting closer to the time as you're getting out? Where are you at that point?
So the Syria time, my last trip there was 2018. That was my last trip to Syria.
And what were you seeing in Syria?
Man, just ISIS at this point. We were defeating ISIS.
And they're the most vicious. I'm assuming they're the most vicious you've ever seen from a group?
They were evil. They weren't good at fighting. They were easy to fight.
Easy to fight.
They were just easy.
Taliban's harder to fight.
Taliban's talented. They've been at war for 20, 30. Yeah. Well, since the 80s. We created, Green Berets built the Taliban, to fight Russia, and then, things happen.
Whoops.
We built I digress. I ain't going to go there yet. Yeah. But, we directly, caused the creation of ISIS too. I'll leave it at that.
By the vacuum of Iraq.
A vacuum, and then also a lot of guns, money, and trucks. But I'll digress. It was an accident, or maybe it was intentional. Who knows? I believe it was an accident, but there's always a reason. A lot of times you have to create your enemy to have a war, or a justification to do something, right? But
so I feel like right now, Matt, I'm getting a window into the game that these agencies have to play.
100%.
For the purpose of America first.
100%.
Right?
Or agenda first.
Agenda first.
Yeah.
Taking care of our interests, which all comes back to money.
100%.
And what I'm hearing you say is sometimes we need to create an enemy in order to have an enemy in order to further an interest.
100%.
And those are the things that you've seen.
Tactics as old as time, man. Every country does it. There's a lot that you can get into when you get past the glorification of things, right?
The glorification of war, being a hero,
yes,
Medal of Honor.
100%, man. Human nature itself is destructive, right? Like we need God, or we will destroy things, and we will try to control each other. Look at history. History is just a cycle of man trying to control another man, whether it's through government, whether it's through religion, through anything else, right? And then people have used God more than anything to justify the killing and control of another man, right?
Yeah.
And I don't mean just the God of Abraham. I mean all gods, all things. I mean you can go all the way back to the Incas and the Aztecs, and then all over Asia. And, they don't believe in what we believe in. Let's kill them, kind of thing. Man's been doing that for forever. We haven't stopped. We just got a lot better at hiding it. Human nature is the one thing that's never evolved and changed in this whole conversation.
Hey guys, Ben Peterson here. I want to thank you for watching part 1 of Matt Murphy's story. And obviously we are right in the middle of what God is doing in his life and his journey through the CIA and through being an operator. So you are not going to want to miss part 2, where we are going to get into probably the largest scale battle that has taken place between U.S. forces and ISIS, as well as Russian counterpart troops. So do not miss part 2 coming at you next week. Guys, please like, subscribe, and share this podcast so that we can get it out to the world and get these stories told so that we can make an impact for the kingdom and for the gospel. God bless you guys. We'll see you soon.